Ugh.
because I guarantee every single person's first instinct is going to be just fire them, let them go. And that sounds like a horrible idea.
Welcome to the Compliant AF podcast, where healthcare compliance isn't just a checklist, it's a competitive advantage.
I'm Amy Wood, CEO of Copperpenny Consulting, a cybersecurity and HIPAA compliance geek who thinks encryption is awesome.
And I'm Kelley, CEO of Clinical HR, fractional HR business partner and HR nerd who is weirdly passionate about employment policy.
If you're a dental or healthcare leader who's tired of check-the-box compliance and wants to actually understand what the rules are and how to build a practice that doesn't live in fear of audits or lawsuits,
you are in the right place. We are digging into the stuff that keeps practice leaders up at night.
We'll break down the boring, call out the BS, and share real strategies with a little snark and a whole lot of caffeine.
This isn't legal advice. We are not your lawyers.
We are two consultants who have seen way too many practices get in trouble because no one explained the rules in a way that actually made sense or made them care.
But since this is a compliance podcast, the content in this podcast or any associated clips is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, medical, tax, or regulatory advice. We are not attorneys. Clinical HR LLC and Copperpenny Consulting LLC are not legal firms, and listening to this podcast does not create a client relationship. Always consult a qualified professional advisor for guidance specific to your situation.
So buckle up, because boring compliance just got compliant AF.
Welcome back to Compliant AF. Amy and I are excited for this conversation today. We're joined here by Katie Tanner of KTHR Innovations. Katie is an expert in all things union, all things labor relations, and this is not something we typically see in the primary industry that Amy and I serve, which is dentistry. But it is something that has become a hot topic of conversation. And so we wanted to address this in kind of a what happens if scenario. And Katie is absolutely the go-to person that I ask anytime I have labor relations questions. So Katie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, super happy to be here. Thank you.
Why don't you just share a little bit about yourself, about your background and some of the types of work that you do?
So my name is Katie Tanner. I am the president and owner of KTHR Innovations. I've been in the HR world for, 15-ish years, something about that. I got my start in skilled nursing and just kind of stuck with the skilled nursing and the home health world. That's where most of my clients are. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun with all the unions within skilled nursing, especially in some of our trickier states, and was head of HR for a skilled nursing owner all through COVID. So that was super fun. Lots and lots of turnover, lots of labor things happening, and laws changing every single day. So yeah, happy and excited to be here with you guys today.
You and I have a different definition of fun, even within the HR space.
And for those of our viewers that aren't actually watching the video on this, Katie has a shirt that says, "We'll trade advice for sushi."
Yes.
So Katie's our kind of gal.
That's right.
I have a similar one, but it's for coffee, and I'm not wearing it today. So Katie wins.
Kara and I have had a few sushi chat lunches, actually. So
Yes, over in Salt Lake City, which is one of my favorite foodie towns. Like, it's one of the surprising foodie towns to go to. But at any rate, so some of the things that we've been seeing, and most specifically, I think it's going to be in the dental assisting space that I have been seeing this. I know in dental hygiene, they have other organizations and things that, they've been working with. But right now, the conversation that I've seen in some of the dental assisting groups on Facebook and just in general are about, we should start a union. And just like most things, I don't know that they think that they know what that means, but just for kind of a dystopian positioning here, what would happen if unions actually came to dentistry? What does that take? What does that look like from the employer perspective? So maybe just kind of share a little bit about that, about like, what would it actually take for, say, a dental assisting group to form a dental assistants union?
Sure. So trying to form it is actually the easy part. You need a certain amount of signatures saying that you want to form one. And then you take that to the NLRB and say, we want to form XYZ union, whatever you want to call it, Dental Assistants United or something like that, right? And then from that point, they actually look at how many people this would actually affect, and then what percentage of signatures you actually got. And then you put together what your actual demands are, what that looks like, whether it's a schedule, benefits, whatever it may be. And then you have to present that to your employer. And then they have a designated amount of time, whether they want to actually recognize the actual union or whether you would have to actually vote it in at that point.
Now, is this within one organization, one state, across the country? Because I've seen a petition that's been floating around. Last I saw it was something like 2,700 signatures. I don't really know what they're asking for, what they plan to do with it, or if they're just trying to get support or see if there's some support out there for the potential for unionizing. But what does that look like? Like most of the practices we work with have, I don't know, 3 to 20 maybe employees.
Sure.
That's not really going to be union rep, territory,
Yeah.
right? What does that look like?
So that's where it gets a little tricky because you would have to prove common ownership in order to actually have it be like multiple places. Like for instance, Starbucks, they had to prove like multiple ownership or communal ownership. So even though they were like individual franchises, you might have a franchise owner who actually owns like 7. And so because that is communal ownership, then that group can actually try, right? So it would be tricky for one like private practice to actually do it all on their own because it's kind of a small practice. And you would have to have enough people who would actually qualify to even be part of a union, because there's also rules to actually be a like bargained person.
Okay. So this seems like it would be more for the larger group practices, the corporate practices, what we'd call in dentistry, the DSOs. I know that there's something similar in veterinary care and chiropractic and other types of healthcare optometry where they're, have some corporate practices. Is that something that would be more limited to them, or could individuals that are in a private practice join with other individuals in a certain state or area to form their own union?
Yeah. So everything just depends on how it gets presented to the NLRB, right? So for instance, within skilled nursing, every single individual building is its own like individual tax FEIN number, and so that building has its own bargained people. So but that's how they tried to actually bargain also. Now your skilled nursing home is going to have anywhere from 50 to like 300 people working at it. And so that's a little bit easier because you have such a large bargained group. If you only have 3 or 4 people bargaining, it's a lot trickier to actually get backup also from the actual unions, because it may not be worth their time to actually help you bargain either, right?
And that's, I
So
think, one of the things that a lot of like dental assistants, and I'm just using them as an example, but team members who feel like they're being underpaid, overworked, whatever the complaint is, I don't think that they necessarily understand that generally if you're trying to participate in a union, it's not just us all joining together and, marching outside with signs saying pay us more money. You have to pay union dues for somebody to actually negotiate that. Correct? And that can be
Yep.
expensive.
Yeah, interesting enough, so there was this one nursing home back in 2022. I think they actually wanted to become the actual union, and so they asked for it, did everything right, voted it in. They all got raises, but then their union dues were actually more than what their raises were, so they all lost money after the first year. And it was like, well, you and so on and their CBA was actually good for like 3 years. So they could not change it for 3 more years.
Explain CBA. We're dealing with people who aren't HR, so explain CBA.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask. I'm like, I don't know what that is.
Bargaining agreement. So when you have a finalized, when you have a finalized agreement, it is called a collective bargaining agreement. So all of the parties put it together, everybody agreed, and And then these are all of your rules for whatever the bargaining agreement timeline is. Typically minimum 12 months all the way up to 3, sometimes 5 years. And so if you all agreed to this agreement and now it's live, and then you get your first check and you got a $5 or $6 raise, but now you're paying $50 every single check for that union fees, now you're losing money. And so then they wanted to bargain for more raises. Well, you already said yes to this 3-year deal. So yes, maybe I will bargain, but I legally do not have to because you already said yes to all of these things. So yeah, it gets a little tricky.
Now, does it matter if, and I'm saying this with like a tongue-in-cheek little giggle because the phrase right to work state is one that gets misapplied all the time when they mean at will, but there are some states that are right to work states and there are some states that are not. Does that matter if you're in a right to work state? Do you have to be a member of the union in a right to work state?
So the answer is yes and no. So I'm in Utah, which is a right to work state. So you can choose to not be represented by them and not pay fees, but they're still going to bargain, and your pay could still be affected by it because this is what we are paying for this job title. Whether you're a bargain member or not, everyone within that job title fits in there. So yes, you can opt out, but if you have any type of issue, you cannot go to them and then say, hey, I want you to fix this because I have a union title. Nope. Like they will not help you because you're not paying dues and you're not being represented. So it's like kind of a gray area almost, right? Because they are still there, but you cannot really benefit from them, even though they are still technically bargaining for you.
Okay, because you are in the state that you have the right to work, so you don't have to be a member of it. But if you're not a member, then you don't get the perks. Not all the perks.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like this would be limited more or less to corporate. If there was a union, say it was a larger, more urbanly populated area where there was several corporate practices in one area and that corporate practice had a union, would other members of private practices be able to join that union and also get represented? Is that any kind of way that they're able to kind of jointly utilize the union that is in a specific area for the same title?
It just depends on how the union was actually organized and how it was set up. So like if it was called dental practice people of Omaha, maybe. If you're a dental practice person within that city, maybe. So it just kind of depends on how it was actually set up. But it gets a little trickier because typically is based off of a certain business. So a certain building, a certain address, a certain FEIN number, just a certain like actual place, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And that's just like you said with your skilled nursing, this is similar to how they work in corporate, where most of the time, from what I've seen, each location is going to have its own FEIN. And so they're going to be their own entity. And so even within corporate, I think that there would be a little bit of a challenge, getting everybody in. They may have some locations that are union and some that are not. And there are some like larger practices that have 30 ops, that have a lot of assistants on staff that might be eligible or able to form a union themselves. Okay, but it sounds like that's not something that could really just be generically done across the country. They couldn't just form a, USA Dental Assistants Union that everybody gets to join and everybody all of a sudden gets, a $5 an hour raise.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, it could be a nationally recognized union, but there would be a separate CBA for every single group, if that makes sense. Now, you might do some of your like bargaining together, but it would be a separate CBA for every like individualized recognized union group, if that makes sense.
And what does that typically cost? Like if a group of people wanted to get together and form a union, what does union dues typically cost? What does a union rep typically cost to actually get that CBA in place?
Yeah, so union dues vary depending on where you are. They also vary depending on like industry. I have seen union dues as cheap as like $20 a month, all the way up to like $75, $150 a month. So it just kind of depends on what your specific union is, where you are located, because they're going to charge you more if you're in a more expensive city, right? So
Okay.
yeah, so it just kind of depends, but pretty typical average is anywhere from like 30 to like 50-ish dollars a month.
Okay. I also imagine it depends on how many people are at that location or are part of the CBA. Because if you have 5 people, that's not going to be $20 a month. They're not doing that for $100 a month. At least I
Right.
know what you charge. So they're not doing that for
Right.
$100 a
So
month.
it also just kind of depends, you know? So yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm not an HR person, but I do have a HR specific question because I am an employer.
Yeah.
If you have a team member that starts talking about organizing as an employer, what can that employer legally not do? Because I guarantee every single person's first instinct is going to be just fire them, let them go. And that sounds like a horrible idea.
And that's actually perfect. That was part of my next question as well. Is like, what do you do if your team wants to unionize? Like, what do you have to play that game, or can you just be like, no?
Yeah, super great question. And there are answers kind of on both ends, right? Because you will have people kind of like chatting about it, but once you have an actual union, you will also have people who will say, how do we get the union out of here, right? So as the employer, you have to stay super neutral on this, right? So the NLRB very specifically states that you cannot discipline people for talking about work issues or about working conditions, and wanting to unionize is actually part of that. So what you can say is that they cannot do anything that will interrupt business operations. So they cannot be sitting there talking about it and not doing their actual job. They cannot put flyers about it in like common areas, but they can put like flyers on like people's cars. They
They can
can
pass them out in the
stop.
parking lot before work. Yeah.
Exactly, right. But they cannot stop business operations. They also cannot give a bunch of falsified claims in order to like scare people into it. So typically when people are trying to actually start the actual union, you will have union reps go directly to people's homes, because that is not affecting work. It is not doing anything with on the like working grounds. Now, on the flip side, if you have someone come and say, I do not like this union, how do we get them out? You cannot say, yeah, I also hate them, we need to get them out, right? Because you have to stay like super neutral. There is a phone number that people can call with all their like union questions. And so we would just tell operators like, hey, if you have questions about the union, here is a phone number. You will have to call them directly. And that's just kind of where you had to kind of put that stance there.
So they can't prevent them from talking about it.
Yeah, it is kind of a fine line.
Okay. What happens if they actually get traction on it, though? And you're not preventing from talking about it. Okay. They've actually formulated, they've gotten somebody to represent them. Now they're trying to create a CBA within, say, like I said, a larger group practice that has a very large location. Maybe there's 50 assistants there. What now? Say they've actually like gotten to the point that everybody wants to, and they've worked with NLRB and National Labor Relations Board. I don't know if we ever clarified that. National Labor Relations Board. NLRA is National Labor Relations Act. If we forgot to clarify that one.
You guys yell at me for all my acronyms.
All of these HR acronyms. Sorry, Amy. Sorry, listeners.
If I get the confused look on my face, just be like, I should probably clarify that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Ask us to clarify, please, because we do it too.
No, you're good. Yeah. So at that point, there is a formal letter that they have to basically write that says, we want to formally let you know that we want to start Union ABC. These are all of our demands. And you set a certain time frame on that as to as to when the ownership will actually speak to you or give you the actual answer. So we would like a answer within 30-ish days, right? And within that, it says, so you either have to say yes, that you want to bargain in good faith, or you can come back and say, nope, I don't want to bargain, but why don't we talk about these issues? And so you can have a non-bargaining conversation about them, see if maybe you can fix some of their demands without bargaining.
Which, in fairness, should be the direction we go anyway before we get to that point. But hey, that's just being all logical and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But you cannot, this is where it gets tricky. As the business owner or the employer, you have to stay neutral. And you cannot bad mouth the actual union. You cannot say anything negative about it. On the flip side, the union can say whatever they want about you. And the employees can say whatever they want about you. And so they can picket and they can strike and they can say that they're being treated really, really bad. And you just kind of have to take it, unfortunately, and just try to be the good guy in the situation, right?
What, you mean you can't go post anonymously in a Facebook group?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, we can have a conversation about this tomorrow around noon. And then your people can actually picket for the next 3 days saying, they will not talk to us and this is unfair. And you can sit there and be like, I will talk to you tomorrow. Let me know if you want to do it. And so it's a lot of just kind of being a neutral person and just trying to figure out how you can try to solve it without the union coming in.
Okay, I'm really glad I'm not in that industry, because if I was able to hold the words in, which there's no guarantee, then
Very
the
tricky.
subtitles on my face would show exactly how I feel. But
Yeah.
also, as an employer, I just want to say that it's kind of like if a team member comes up and says, my gosh, I just found out I'm pregnant. And outwardly you have to say, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. We'll help however we can. But inside you're like, I got to get somebody to cover her. And oh my gosh, what if she never comes back? And
Right.
it's all of that as a business owner too. And it's exhausting.
It is.
So.
It is definitely. Yeah. And I also have one of those spaces that actually says, more than I want it to. So yeah, sitting in some of the bargaining meetings, I have to either put my head down or grab my water bottle or like.
If I like Zoom, you can turn the video off.
Yeah.
I was actually told once on a Zoom call, somebody texted me and said, quick, turn your video off. Your subtitles are showing.
Right. Yes. Yes. It does get very, very tricky, especially when some of the demands come and you're just like, do you really think they're going to give you this? Right. But it's a very common practice when you are bargaining to throw out your like biggest thing possible. Right. And then the employer comes in at the lowest option possible. And then you just start playing the whole game. It's like buying a car, right? It's like, I can afford this payment. Well, this is what we can offer you. And then you just play the light game until you're both on the same page, right? And so that's unfortunately kind of how bargaining goes. And sometimes it's really fun, in all honesty. I have actually been in some really fun bargaining meetings, and sometimes it's extremely frustrating because you will fight over a 10-cent raise for like 3 days. It just depends, So
that brings up another question. If, for example, a dental practice or healthcare practice were presented with this letter that says, hey, these are our demands, we're forming a union, you have to come to the table now, who should they reach out to? This is not a time, I assume, to go reach out to that real estate attorney that drafted your lease agreement. This is not a time to go, like I said, post on Facebook. I imagine there's some very specific either attorneys or representatives that they should go speak with before they say a word to anyone else. Who are those people?
Yeah. So there are specific labor union attorneys. So you want to search for a like labor attorney, union attorney. Most of your employment attorneys have some type of contact that they can forward you to, and or you can reach out to some HR consultants like myself who actually understand bargaining, and we can kind of point you in the right direction. We can help you understand what that CBA says or what that like initial bargaining letter says, but unfortunately this is the time to actually have counsel step in. So
Yeah, real legal advice that is protected and privileged conversation.
Yeah. You don't want to go to Facebook and say, I had a whole bunch of people bargain. What do I do now? Right? Because it's just not going to go over well. You're going to get both of the sides and they're going to be very, very heated and you're not going to get a straight answer. So go to someone who knows what they're talking about. Reach out to your employment attorney and they can typically point you in the right direction.
Perfect. Are there any states that are more prone to unionizing or having teams of unions? Just out of curiosity, I know there's some very labor-friendly states and there's some very employer-friendly.
I mean, I would say like California is super union heavy, especially within the healthcare world.
Color me
Very,
shocked.
very common. What's that?
I said color me shocked.
I know. Yeah, very, very true. Yeah. So, I mean, there are pretty much unions everywhere, in all honesty. Some of them are more vocal than others. Some of them are more prominent in certain industries, but a lot of the East Coast states like New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Jersey, they all have unions. And then, like I said, California, super common to have unions, especially within healthcare. So honestly, they're everywhere. So
I just don't see a lot of it here in Texas, for sure. I know there's a few, but it tends to be more on like blue collar, at least from what I've seen here.
yeah, Texas has more of the like the railroad folks, the oil workers, and
like
those
a pipe fitters union here.
Yes, yeah. A lot more of the blue collar folks down there for sure.
And in the Midwest, I see a lot of teachers unions and hospitals.
Yeah. Your most common unions outside of healthcare are the airlines. Most of your airlines are all unions. Most of your teachers are all unions. It's very, very common. And railroad, those are your most common ones outside of like healthcare.
Interesting. So overall, though, it sounds like it's possible but highly unlikely for most of the smaller practices to have team members who are able to really join an effective union, right? And so my question then, if we're talking about like what does the dystopia look like here, is another thing that I've been seeing, and you actually mentioned it earlier before we got on this call, that you have a situation where a hospital has hired temps to fill in for nurses who were striking. That's something that I've seen, we've seen it with hygiene for years and years. Now, at least definitely since COVID, where hygienists understand that they can make more temping. And so some of them are like, well, we didn't get benefits or we weren't treated well, or, we didn't feel like the culture was here. And so we've just decided we're going to go and temp and make money that way. Or we only work a 4-day week. And so we'll go temp on the 5th day, or whatever the case is. I'm now also seeing a lot of assistants who are asking, how do I start temping? I see assistants in some of these conversations saying, I'm making this much more temping. I'd rather be temping. It's so much easier to temp. I'm wondering now if that's really the direction that many of them end up going. If they get to a point where they're like, well, okay, this union thing sounds great, but it's probably not going to get us where we want to be. And so forget it. We'll just go temp. What does that look like? I think, and this is Amy, this is a conversation I know you can definitely jump in on as well, because we've had these conversations before. What does that look like?
I would say the most common things that people bargain for is pay, benefits, time off. Those are your most, and schedules. That is the most common bargained for items. So if you don't care about medical benefits, if you don't care about a set schedule, if you don't care about a set time off options, then sure, temping's great, right? During COVID, there were travel nurses making $1,000 a day or more, sometimes $2,500 a day, because there was such a huge shortage. And so, and some of them kept that, right? Because they did not care about a steady schedule. They could pick up and then go. If you have a family, that isn't an option, right? or it isn't always an option. If you need medical benefits, then it's probably not an option for you. So it just kind of depends. There will always be temp workers no matter what. No matter how much you are paying someone, no matter how much there are amazing benefits, there will always be temporary workers available. So it just kind of depends, in all honesty. They will not go away. But there will also always be people who want a guaranteed set shift, and they want a guaranteed set schedule, and they want a guaranteed amount of time off, and they do not want to travel, and they want medical benefits, and those are the people who you should be worried about, and those are the people who you should be taking care of first.
Well, and on some level, we need people who are available to temp because our regular team members are going to be out at some point for some reason. And we do need to have people available to step in and cover
Right.
those shifts. We need a healthy balance of it. We just don't need it to shift the direction I feel like hygiene has shifted over the last several years, where there are so many that are temping, and that it's really driven up the cost of what it takes to bring a hygienist in, because if they can make this much temping, then they tend to ask for more of an hourly rate when they're in that full-time job. And that's kind of, and like I said, the conversation I've even seen over this last weekend is there's a platform out there that has allowed temps, the people who are actually doing the temping, to set a rate that they will temp at, but they are now also allowing the practices to put out, hey, we have this job available for this day, or the shift available for this day. And of course, I know this doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. What the practice is offering is a lot less than what the worker is wanting. There's
Sure.
definitely a disparity there by several dollars an hour. I know, shock.
Well, right. And that's always going to be there, right? Like if I am a temp person and I want to make X amount of dollars, I'm always going to ask for more just to kind of see who will say yes, right? Because there's always a last minute thing that you need, right? I mean, Amy said this earlier. I think like when you have someone who is having a baby and you do not expect them out for 6 more weeks, and now they have a preemie birth and they're all of a sudden gone, you need someone in like 2 hours. And so maybe you will desperately pay for that first day just because you need someone right that second when you weren't expecting to have coverage for another 4 to 6 weeks, right? And so sometimes you just have to in order to make sure that your patients are taken care of at that point, right? So
It's the convenience fee.
yeah, it is.
Being able to have that quickly. I'm curious if, like Kara's saying, it's going to shift more and more to less people being full-time or part-time actual employees and more people being temps, because I'm starting to see that more and more. And I've been to a lot of conferences this year, and this topic is being talked about by the dentists and the office managers and the practice administrators. And they're throwing out these wild, crazy high numbers of what people are temping for and also what employees are asking for. And I mean, Kara, I don't know what you've seen as far as, but I saw one that was in the mid 90s an hour, which
Yeah.
astronomical when you think how much a reimbursement for insurance for a hygiene appointment is. You're upside down on that as a practice owner. And it seems like the trend is just going to continue to snowball to a point where the practices just can't afford temps or independent people.
Sure.
Do you see like maybe that could be a thing that they start going on their own, or even, sorry, I'm like, I had 2 minutes, my Adderall just kicked in.
No, you're good. No, I
Now.
understand. You're good. We're on the same page here. I think like sure, like that could definitely happen, but like here's the thing. No matter what, you will always have people who want set hours. No matter what. Maybe they're your newest hire, maybe they've been there for 20 years. You will always have someone who wants a set schedule, but you will always have someone who wants a flexible one. And so you just have to look at what makes the most sense for my business operations, what makes the most sense for my patients, because you also have patients who will want random hours, right? Like I know for myself, I have a phenomenal dentist who is open until 8 p.m. 3 days a week, which is fabulous because I can go after work, after dinner. He also is open every other Saturday for like 10 hours, which is awesome, right? So you will always have people who want that set schedule. You will always have patients who want a random schedule. And so maybe it'll be this combination of I have 60% set staff, and then I have random people due to my random patients and their random hours, right? And so I think no matter what, you have to find whatever that happy medium is, not only for yourself, but for your patients. But the market dictates whatever someone will actually pay. So if the practice owners are paying $100 an hour, then people are going to keep asking for it. If they're not going to pay it, then people will eventually stop asking for it because now they can't find shifts either, right? So it's that kind of happy medium where eventually it's going to go down because people are going to stop paying it, you
Yeah,
know?
the market demands it. I
Mhm.
find it interesting because, like, we're starting to see some states that are allowing hygienists to open their own practices, or they have expanded
Interesting.
functions licenses. Yeah, like I'm thinking Colorado off the top of my head. California has mobile hygienists that they'll allow people to do mobile hygiene. And they're very interesting concepts because they create a symbiotic relationship between the dentist and the hygienist outside of a traditional dental practice setting.
Mhm.
So I wonder if that might be more attractive or alluring to other states going forward in lieu of collective bargaining rights.
Sure. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that is very
from a pay compliance standpoint, if you have somebody who can practice independently and who actually has their own business filling in for a day or two, and it's their business, that is reaching out, that's somebody who could actually be an independent contractor, right? Because that's not, so they're not doing the business of the business. Their business is their own thing. And then they just occasionally temp and their clients are the practices necessarily. That isn't one of those like rare arrangements that you could potentially see that, but that works for hygiene. That doesn't work for assistance. And so like, going further into that, like I said, if that goes that direction, you're still going to have your assistants that if you're paying them directly need to be paid as W-2 employees rather than as contractors or cash under the table or gift cards or write them a check at the end of the day or whatever else these dentists like to come up with. We've talked about this before. But it's one of those things that, like for hygiene for associates, those are the situations where that is a possibility in certain circumstances with certain things in place. That's not likely going to be something that assistants can typically do. Although that is it's very rare. It's one of the conversations I will occasionally see pop up that an assistant said, "Oh yeah, somebody told me to start my own LLC and I can just have them pay my LLC and me just go and temp as an independent contractor." I'm like, I don't think you can do that.
no, no.
No concept of what owning, operating, and working in a business is like. And even if that was something that you could or should do, it doesn't mean that it's going to be fun. It sucks on a good day.
Yep.
And on a bad day, you're like, why do I keep doing this to myself? But we
Mhm.
do. And yeah, another thing I was thinking while you guys were talking was we're starting to see some states that are allowing dental assistants, licensed dental assistants, the registered dental assistants, not the unlicensed DAs, where they're allowing additional licenses for extended functions, where they're allowing them to do certain activities that dentists would do, making them incredibly valuable. And I wonder if those might be more attractive to existing dental assistants. They can command a higher wage because of that extra licensing. They're able to do more. They're able to feel that somewhat autonomy without the BS of being a business owner.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, why not? Right? I think I think another thing that could start happening is that you would also see these practices going to like cash only because they can't get a good enough reimbursement. And so they're just gonna take cash and now they're gonna charge more because they gotta pay people more, right?
And we do have a lot of that. Yeah, we call it fee for service in dentistry, and so we do have quite a few of practices that have gone that direction because yes, if the insurance companies aren't really able to pay them what they can survive on, then yes, that is certainly an option.
Because
in general, the fee
that's
for
very
crown hasn't changed in 30 years.
Right, right. Like I was about to say, like one of your biggest issues, especially in skilled nursing, is that Medicare billing, which is most of your billing within skilled nursing, Medicare billing rates have not changed in, I don't even know, like 20 plus years. And so
For
I
the 1900s.
Right. And so, but I have to give a bargained person a raise every 6 months or every 12 months, depending on what they bargained for. But I can't bill more for those services. Right. And so and so then business owners start getting a little trickier. Hey, I will give you a discount if you pay cash, but I'm going to charge more if you do cash. Right? Because I can make more money because I don't have to fight the insurance company and wait 90 days for that payment. Right? I have the payment today or whatever. So I could see that happening sooner than a whole bunch of people just going temp.
Yeah, and we've already seen that shift, and it is part of a huge conversation. I think it's going to end up being even a bigger conversation unless there is something that can be done. And that's unfortunately what it comes down to oftentimes is that we end up fighting the wrong people. We're us versus them when it comes to assistants versus doctors, or your mid-level producers, your nurses, your hygienists versus whomever. and it really is more about how do we actually get everything to function well to where we can all win here, to where we can all be paid what we deserve and what it really costs to run this business and still make this a profitable entity. Because at the end of the day, it is, whether you're a private practice or a corporate conglomerate, it is a for-profit entity, and so that is ultimately the goal. We don't all just do things out of the kindness of our hearts. I know, crazy.
I love how you said mid-level, because I worked in a surgical ICU. I worked in a nursing home. Like I've been in medical, and I'll be honest. Yeah, the doctors are great and they have a lot of education. They have a lot of letters after their names and a whole lot of zeros in debt. But let's be honest, those mid-level people are the ones that know all the ins and outs of every little detail, every little thing, everything about that patient. They're the ones that communicate with them more often. They have more situational I can't even think of the word, menopause brain, situational awareness of everything. And those are the people that are truly the drivers of that business.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
maybe don't piss them off. Maybe treat them very well.
Well, and I know in other healthcare settings, some of them have just as many acronyms after their name or post-nominals after their name as some of the doctors. And sometimes more, especially when it comes to nursing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that, and like, I think as a practice owner, you have to try and be as transparent as you can about cost versus other things. If I am a mid or a lower level person and I'm seeing thousands and thousands of billable treatments every single day and I feel that I'm underpaid, right? There should be a way for that business owner to actually show hey, this is my cost at the end of the day. This is what I'm making. And if you can be transparent about that, because you always can't, but if you can try to actually be transparent about it, then a lot of people actually understand that, all right, great, I am making good money for what I'm doing. Right? You will always find a better paying job somewhere. It doesn't mean that you're qualified for it or that you can get hired for it, but there should be other things besides just what that hourly rate is on your check, right? So
and I know we're coming toward the end of our time here, and since we are compliant AF, I think I will just end on, a lot of what we're talking about here may not sound like compliance, but from what we have, I'm sure all seen, Katie, we haven't had as much conversation about this, but I know Amy and I have seen, when we get pressed, when we get people that are demanding higher wages, that are talking about unionizing, that are doing these things, that tends to lead to us having some shortcuts that we end up taking, some things that we end up cutting out, some of the compliance things, boxes that we don't check because we're, feeling stressed and pressed and desperate and trying to save $1. And so it, I feel, does still factor into that compliance conversation, especially like what you were talking about earlier with the unionizing, talking about how we're paying our temps, but even talking about how we just kind of build our cultures and practices to where people don't feel like our teams don't feel like they need to go form a union or feel like they want to temp instead of be part of our team. I think that can lead to a lot of issues, a lot of wage and hour issues, a lot of compliance issues, a lot of security issues, things that we end up cutting so many corners on because we're just trying to save money. And that
Sure.
affects all of us at the end of the day.
True.
Thank you so much for joining
Yeah.
us today. We were excited to have this conversation. I learned a lot. Like I said, unions are not my thing. If anybody reaches out to me, I'm going to send them to Katie.
Absolutely. Yeah. Super nice chatting with you guys too.
Thank you so much for helping us keep our practices compliant AF.